So again, I'm sorry. Just want to welcome everyone to the assembly tonight. We're so honored, grateful, and humbled that you're here, and we are excited that you're willing to share with us tonight. And we more than that, our hearts are open to learn and to be able to gather information and share it with our various communities as well. So I'm looking forward for tonight, and if I forget something or overlook something, please help me out, Dina. I, I look forward to making sure we stay on task and stay on point. We do have several speakers tonight, and our first speaker is Anita Johnson. If I have worked with her so much this year and years past with voting, and she's the outreach and educational manager for Souls to the Polls. And uh, in Milwaukee, Souls to the Polls in Milwaukee, she's also spearheaded election protection and election administration program at Citizen Action previously. She worked for Vote Riders as Wisconsin ID State Coalition coordinator, People for America Way as Wisconsin Election Protection State Coordinator, recruiting and training volunteers to work for the polls on election day, as well as educating the public about voters' rights. Anita has served as Wisconsin Election Administrative Council for the Wisconsin Government Accountability Board, the state agency that manages election. She also worked for many years for AFSM SME, I think I'm saying that right, District Council 48, as a member of the Coalition Black Trade Unionists. Anita has served as the board of Labor Historical Society and Wisconsin State Retirees. She's worked with Block Citizen Actions of Wisconsin, the African American Roundtable, and she has received numerous awards, and we recognize her as a lot of work that she has done. And she's been on my radio show. She's come to various places and give information and teaching people about voting and your rights. She is very proud to be a recipient of the Robert H. Freeber Social Justice Award. She just recently received the Black Excellence Award and have attended a MATC. Anita is a graduate of Future Milwaukee Center for Progressive Leadership and Milwaukee Academy Organizing Program, as well as a graduate of Milwaukee Business Training Institute. I know her so well as a sister. We just been doing so much in the city of Milwaukee, and I know she does things abroad, and people have patterned what she does, and they have mimic it. And so I just think she's an extraordinary woman. So I present to you Anita Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ty, for that. And thank you so much for having me here today. I want to talk about a couple of things first, because I want you to know what Souls to the Polls does. Souls to the Polls Wisconsin is a nonprofit, nonpartisan voter education and advocacy organization. We believe that voting is our collective power, a tool we can use to build stronger, safer, and more supportive communities. Since our founding in 2013, we have united Milwaukee faith leaders and their congregations to strengthen the voting power of the Black communities as well as all other communities. And because I am who I am, I do need to talk a bit about the upcoming election, because I still feel that enough people don't know who they're voting for, why they are voting, and what the courts do. A bit about the upcoming election. On April 1st, you, the voter, will have the opportunity to vote for a circuit court judge, a municipal court judge, and a Supreme Court judge. This is a very important election. Whether you know it or not, These courts affect our daily lives and our voting rights. Many of us don't know what these courts do and how they affect our daily lives. So just a bit about a couple of the courts. The Wisconsin Circuit Court are trial courts for civil and criminal cases in the Wisconsin court system. Circuit court judges' decision can affect the voting laws. Circuit court judges' decisions can affect the voting laws. The Supreme Court, there are 7 judges who are elected by you, the voter. Their political view affects our state policies. For example, in 2022, the court ruled that the election ballot drop box was illegal. This affected people of color, people with disabilities, and senior citizens. The Wisconsin court in a 4-3 decision reinstated the use of the ballot drop boxes, overturning a decision that they had made 2 years ago. Voters were allowed to use the drop boxes for the 2024 election. The Supreme Court elections are nonpartisan. No one runs as a Democrat or Republican. The court now has 3 conservatives and 4 progressive judges. One of the progressive judges is retiring, and we, the voter, will vote in a new judge. These are things that people should know before they go to the polls to vote. And I'm just giving you a little bit update on what's happening with these courts. I am sure, and I hope, that most of you are aware of the April 1st election. Now we're going to talk a little bit about protecting your voting rights. Voting rights are the cornerstone of democracy, ensuring that every voice is heard and represented in the decisions that shape our lives. Without the fundamental right, democracy crumbles, leaving a society in jeopardy to inequality and injustice. Protecting our right to vote is not just about protecting your own individual right to vote, it's about protecting everyone's right to vote. How often do you make sure that your neighbors are registered voters when there's the election? Do you canvass your own neighborhoods and let people know about the upcoming election? Do you offer rides to the polls? Do you know your voting rights? Why am I asking you these questions? Because voter turnout significantly influences policy outcomes, highlighting the crucial roles of voting right in democracy. When turnout is high, policies tend to reflect the need of a broader population. Low voter turnouts often result in policies that benefit only the privileged few. This difference emphasized the importance of safeguarding and encouraging voter participation to ensure democracy serves everyone, not just a select minority, and also helps to protect our voting rights. We protect our right to vote when we vote. When citizens vote, they have the power to elect representatives who align with their values and interests. Elected officials then decide on crucial issues such as healthcare, education, and criminal justice. Without the right to vote, citizens lose their influence over these decisions, leading to governance that may not reflect the people's will. The Voting Rights Act was passed 55 years ago, and Voting Rights Acts and the voting rights are still under attack. Unfortunately, we will always fight voter suppression, which is an attempt to prevent or discourage certain people from registering to vote or casting their ballots. Groups that are most often attacked are the people with disabilities, Black and Brown communities, low-income citizens, and senior citizens. The most widely used form of voter suppression is the voter ID law and the proof of citizenship restriction, reduced polling places hours, the elimination of early voting opportunities, and illegal purges of voters from the rolls. Folks, unfortunately, there is not a magic wand to protect voting rights. The Supreme Court and the circuit courts have the power to change and have changed voting laws for years. After the April 1st election, there will be no more elections this year, as far as I know. This is the time for you to make sure your voting records are in order. When you moved, did you change your address online or did you go to the DMV? If you got married and have you gone to the Social Security office and the DMV to change your name and then re-register to vote? Has your name been purged off the voter roll? If so, why? You need to check on these things to make it easier for you when you go to vote. Are your children 18 years of age? Do they have a state ID or a driver's license? Are they a registered voter? Check on your parents and make sure they have a permanent state ID so they can continue to vote if they no longer drive. Have a block party. Make sure everyone who comes is a registered voter. And this can be done by going to myvote.wi.gov. Ensure that you are knowledgeable about voting laws before you assist anyone with voter registration or the photo ID process. You can maintain your voting power and your voting rights by putting in the effort to stay generally educated and informed about voting. Let me repeat that. You can maintain your voting power and your voting rights by putting in the effort to stay generally educated and informed about voting. So let me ask you a question. What are you doing to protect your voter rights? Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Well done, job well done as usual. I'm not surprised that you gave such an excellent presentation. She gave the presentation at a senior home facility, and a lot of people were not aware that you could get a permanent ID if you're not driving anymore. So great job. Thank you, Anita. And is there any questions before we move forward? Okay, if you have anything later, we can come back as you think. I do see we do have the awesome and beautiful Erica Bach online. And so I'm excited. She's going to talk about something that's dear to me, been someone that is disabled myself. This is really important to me. Erica joined the WMPJ board back in 2020 in the midst of the global uprising and calls for an end to state-sanctioned violence. She is compelled to action in collaboration with people who support the need for justice in the interconnected criminal, legal, carceral systems, and our educational environment and economic infrastructures. Erica strives to build community in solidarity with lifelong learners and facilitators of social, racial, and disability justice, accessible community well-being, human rights advocacy, and peace education. for you, for those who don't know her, she's a wonderful woman, beautiful woman that has a big heart. And I want to introduce to you Miss Erica Bach. Are you ready, Erica? Erica?
I am here. Thank you for
Okay.
that amazing introduction, Janetta. Yeah, you're gonna make me work extra hard for it now. And welcome everybody. It's such an honor to serve on this board of so many both similar minds and hearts for peace and for justice, and also so many different abilities. And really just want to say thank you for each of you for being here in whatever ways you are able. Showing up looks different based on our abilities. And what I have often been told, and I'm reminded of daily, is that we are only able bodied until we are not. We are only able minded until we are not. We are also only free until we are not. And I know in this country, as we fight for freedom in other places in the world, we see it also being challenged here. So many of you are going to see, if you look for my profile picture, you'll see a number to contact in regards to the upcoming threats and ongoing threats to Medicaid. And the reason that I share that is because a disproportionate number of folks with disability are going to be impacted should these services and needs be um, unmet. So just want to ask you all to please make note of that, to share with your representative how important this is to you. And the other piece that I really just want to make sure that we highlight here is that there are a lot of different terms. And if you yourself identify as either disabled or having a disability, if the terms that I'm using for my condition or my experience don't sit well with you, I would love to welcome folks to use the agency that you have to speak up about what you like and what works for you. So disability justice is a movement within social justice circles that really seeks to explore the intersections where disability meets with the other forms of oppression. It emphasizes collective liberation. I'm not free until everyone is free, and also the systemic change that's necessary, as opposed to just solely focusing on individual rights. One of the things that we're really doing this week is looking at those interconnections. And so disability justice is an opportunity to recognize that people with disabilities often experience multiple forms of oppression based on race or socioeconomics, gender, sexual orientation, and other identities. And so the marginalization runs across many different identifiers. And that is another point that I just think is really important to name, that we cannot discuss disability justice without naming that it is connected to white supremacy, anti-Blackness, colonialism, marginalization. And so please know that as we move forward as WNPJ, the peace and the justice that we seek in the world also is necessary in our own bodies. So I was flabbergasted, as some of you may be, to know that it is only 35 years ago, in 1990, that the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. 1970, which is not that many years before my birth, was the first time in California that sidewalk ramps were introduced. And it seems so commonplace now, but ultimately that individuals with wheelchairs did not have access to safe transportation across sidewalks and street and crosswalks. And it took the uprising of individuals, of fighting, of lobbying, of protesting, so that many of the rights that we have as people with disabilities today, and actually many of the rights that we have as people without disabilities, are available. So I think that's a really crucial part is that it's within several of our lifetimes that this has actually happened. And now we are seeing the rollback of some of those rights. And I want to use this term very carefully as we dig in, but many have compared what is happening with the current administration to be a form of eugenics, and that they're framing folks of color, Black people, the DEI components of looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion are being scapegoated. And many of the administration are claiming that people with disabilities should be eradicated. It is extremely challenging to listen to the rhetoric about our bodies. And that is something that we have in common across many marginalized identities. So I think that it's really critical that when we talk about disability rights, that we recognize that amplifying those, uplifting those, protesting the stripping back of those benefits each and every one of us in our various forms of oppression and marginalization. There is no hierarchy of oppression, as the great late Audre Lorde would tell us. And so the disability justice movement is in lockstep, which is even actually an ableist term, right? But is side by side with the many other movements that we see in this time. And so please excuse me for just one moment, because I do want to make sure that I get the facts and figures right. I don't want to misquote anyone who's done a lot of work. And namely, I want to shout out Disability Rights Wisconsin for the really tremendous infographics and easily accessible information that they've been providing. And I think this is a really critical part to share with you all, because one of the reasons that we need to protect both Medicaid and Medicare is that 1 in 3 people with disabilities uses Medicaid in Wisconsin. 1 in 6 people in wheelchairs is using Medicare. 4 out of 7 nursing home residents are using Medicaid. 1 in 3 children and 1 in 7 people aged 19 to 64 are all using Medicaid. Medicaid, as it applies to disability justice, is anyone under the age of 65 with conditions that are impacting their daily functions. And so for some of us, that looks like a neurodivergent condition. For some of us, that might be inability to use particular limbs or bodily functions. But the one piece that I also want to offer to all of us is that we are so socialized to believe that it is just a small percentage of the population that would be disabled, or oftentimes it becomes dehumanizing to say how high functioning someone is, as if normal is what we should all strive to be. And in that way, it does erase the ways in which people need support, in which we all have challenges and struggles. To refer to ourselves or anyone as low functioning, it really dehumanizes people by ignoring their personhood and their capabilities. And so I know that that's something that we will all take very seriously, from trying to disavow ourselves from ableist practices, or trying to instead prioritize the voices and the needs of people who are disabled. So oftentimes disabled people are perceived as being unable to advocate for ourselves. And this is clearly a very false assumption, because we wouldn't have the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, without that. And just in trying to keep this very short and sweet, we know that for so many of us, prohibiting discrimination on the basis of disability or the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic class, religion, these are all interrelated struggles. And the disability justice movement is really a tremendous place. I found my political home here, with the intersectionality, clearly an anti-capitalist perspective, cross-movement solidarity building, sustainability, and most importantly, an interdependence. Again, the notion of Ubuntu is I am because you are. It doesn't say I am because I can't move my body in the same way as you. It's I am because you are. And so I really am so grateful to highlight this for you all. Again, I'm not telling you anything that a number of us don't already know, but there are a number of ways to fight disability discrimination, both here in Wisconsin and now as we're seeing across the country as well. So as we see these pushbacks, please remember that you have folks in your life or yourself in your own body. Some of the things that you might be grappling with are in fact disabilities, and we can work together to amplify this cause. So if any of these are affecting you, cancer, diabetes, PTSD, HIV, autism, cerebral palsy, deafness, blindness, epilepsy, mobility disabilities, intellectual disabilities, depressive disorder, traumatic brain injury. These are all things that actually bring us together as opposed to separating us. And I welcome the opportunity to explore with many of you how we continue to push back and be advocates and use our agency, not only for disability justice, but for the peace to live our best and fullest lives. And I want to just thank you so much also to Ms. Anita for highlighting that these are the types of things that are at stake on our ballot. And just one final plug is I'd like to also give a tremendous thank you to Judge Everett Mitchell here in Dane County. Unfortunately, his ruling, which was that absentee ballots could be emailed to individuals with disabilities, was just overturned by I believe, a Waukesha County judge. And so the fight will continue. It takes these, some people have called the legal system a detriment to people with disabilities. And yet we do know that there are advocates and there are people who are willing to take up the charge for us as well and with us. So I welcome all of you into another version of another part of the movement. And that is something that we will continue to lift up and work on together. As you all know, those of us who believe in freedom cannot rest. So let us continue the work that we have ahead of us. And thank you so much for each and every one of you for being here.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so, I just feel just grateful that you were able to share and that you agreed to share this information with everyone again as a chronic pain sufferer. And this is something that's dear to my heart as well. And so I thank you. And I know Judge Everett Mitchell personally, and you're right. He's a great man that advocates on the behalf of disability rights. That thank you, thank you, thank you. We're going to move forward. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And after everyone has presented, I've gotten the information that we will save questions to the end. But we will move forward. And Julia Greenberg will be our next presenter. And I'm so excited to that they're part of the WMPJ organization as well. And from my understanding, she's with Wisconsin Coalition for Justice in Palestine. And if am I right? And you can't correct me if I am wrong. And Jewish Voice for Peace in Madison as well. Thank you, thank you. And I think she's going to be talking about boycotts. And I'm interested because we know with the current administration, that is something they're trying to eliminate. So thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. And here you go, Julia. Thank you for being with us.
Great. Thanks so much. And thanks to Dina and Judy for helping to organize this and for inviting me. I'm really humbled to be talking with all of you amazing and very accomplished organizers. I'm just a college instructor who's involved on this stuff on the side. Right, I'm here to talk to you about a campaign that kind of a coalition of people and groups, many of them involved in WNPJ are involved in, involving our basic right to boycott. So of course, in the current climate we are in of repression, I think many of us are looking for all the methods of peaceful protest at our disposal. I also, by the way, should apologize for distractions. There are 2 kids in various stages of bedtime, so please excuse that. Right, we're all looking for how we can take collective action, right? And one of, the time-honored ways that we peacefully protest, that we take action, build people powers through boycotts. We know from history, time and again, that economic boycotts work, right? They were critical for ending Jim Crow policies in the South, critical for ending apartheid in South Africa. And actually, in the apartheid movement, there were many US states that actually mandated that their contractors were boycotting that government. We also know that the US Supreme Court protects economic boycotts, recognizing them as protected by the First Amendment. So this is also a free speech right that we have. So, I think it's surprising because in many ways, we are taught to really value and valorize boycotts in American culture. It can be surprising to many people to learn that many states have anti-boycott laws on their books. Wisconsin is one of 38 states that has one of these laws. And we have 2 state representatives who are going to be introducing a repeal to it later this spring. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Wisconsin's anti-boycott law. So our law requires any individual or business or organization that is trying to receive a state contract of $100,000 or more to pledge that they will not boycott Israel. And this is grounds for termination if it's discovered that they are, if they are publicly boycotting. This also extends into boycotts of involvement in the illegal settlements. So, many of us came to this campaign because we have an interest in Palestinian solidarity and ending, the daily war crimes that Israel is involved in and our complicity in that. However, there are many people interested in our campaign and involved in our campaign who are really passionate about a range of other progressive causes. Yep, go ahead.
Can I draw something?
Yes, you can draw something. And that's because these anti-boycott laws have really become a template to restrict boycotts of a variety of other progressive causes. So who designed these anti-boycott laws that originally are focusing on boycotts of Israel? It was ALEC, which many of us know, right, from their involvement in crafting a variety of legislation for the conservative right, the American Legislative Exchange Council. And what's happened since about 2015, when these anti-boycott laws started being passed, is that they've just been used as kind of a blueprint. So I'll give you some examples of where this has gone. In Texas, you cannot get a state contract unless you pledge to not boycott the firearm industry. In Alabama, you cannot get a state contract unless you pledge not to boycott insurance companies that are withdrawing reproductive health care from people. In Utah, you can't get a state contract unless you pledge that you're not going to boycott insurance companies that won't provide gender-affirming care. So those industries, the energy industry, the firearm industry, right, are ones that have kind of been given this copycat status. Either kind of copycat bills have been passed, or the original legislation focused on boycotts of Israel has simply been amended to add a list of other causes that the conservative right doesn't want us to be able to boycott. Okay, so it's truly outrageous. There's even one in Missouri that was introduced earlier this year that would basically make it impossible to get a contract unless you pledged you would not boycott anything. So unless you pledged that your decisions would be based only on financial judgments and no other interest in social causes. And this year alone, 12 at least anti-boycott laws have been introduced in various states. So we know, as I said, right, this is one of many tools that we're seeing used repeatedly. There's also, by the way, legislation at the federal level, which I'm not as familiar with, but I know didn't go anywhere for a while, but surprise, is reappearing with the federal government status that we have right now. So as I said, we have a couple of awesome state representatives, Francesca Hong and Ryan Clancy, who are going to be introducing a repeal to our state's anti-boycott law. And our campaign is here to try to provide a really strong show of support. We know that when our bill was came in originally as one of Scott Walker's executive orders in 2017, there wasn't that much noise made about it. There were a lot of powerful lobbyers, but there wasn't a lot of individuals talking about, you know, why they think these laws are outrageous or how this affects them. So we're hoping that that's different this time around. I'm going to share some links about how you can get involved. And then, you know, I can either answer some questions now or we can save that for the end. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We will save that for the end. We really appreciate you. I'm very interested, so I'm looking forward to the information that you will be sharing with us. And I think many others, and I know that the group will be making sure that that information is disseminated to everyone as well. Dina, I have lost my internet connection on one of my tablets here. And if you can go ahead and introduce our next presenter, which is Paul. Is Paul here?
Yes, he is.
Paul Domain.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Well, Paul, I think it would be best to just you to introduce yourself. And I just want to mention that Julia will be on the Weaving the Web, is also talking about the right to boycott, which is next Thursday at noon. So let's hear from Paul, talking about treaty rights and native sovereignty.
Hey, bonjour, Kenan Dinaway Maganaduk. Welcome to all my relatives. My English name is Paul Domain. My Ojibwe name is Ska Bewis, and I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you tonight, even though I suspect that this is the choir that already knows much of this. It's always nice to kind of get bumped back up and be reminded about certain things. And so rather than running a long list of accomplishments, I'm just going to get in to make this a little bit short. Nita Johnson reminded me about how difficult it is already to get registered to vote in the state of Wisconsin. And I've had some younger relatives who've been very frustrated at that process, but I've been a voter for now 48 years in the town of Bass Lake. Same place, same station, same residence. And in the last 3 years, I've been removed twice from the rolls, voting rolls. Once because Department of Transportation put a space between my last name, D-E, and the capital M-A-I-N, and Domain. My driver's license had been like that for ever since I got my driver's license permit. And it was interesting that I got bumped from the rolls because my name did not match my driver's license and the registration that I did after having been on the rolls for 45, 46 years. Got removed, so I went to the polls last election, big election, just to make sure. I went in to make sure that everything was cool again, that it was back on. I had to sign a few things, and the lady says, "No, you're not on the rolls anymore. We don't have you registered." So she had to look up some things, and basically she came back and says, "Well, it said that you didn't provide a photo ID," which I had provided when you originally had to provide a photo ID. And I provided a photo ID to get re-registered when DOT removed me the first time. But it didn't take long for her to say, "Oh, there must be some kind of a mistake there." And I says, "Yeah, that's indeed a mistake. Unfortunately, for most people, they're not as articulate or as loud as me. I'm a highly active individual. I operating at a level that the clerk over there doesn't care for at times, but she took care of me right away. But I think that other people have been frustrated and walked away from that. So we have to get back to universal registration. You get your driver's license, they register you. You register for Medicaid or Medicare or whatever it is. All these state programs that take all the information that you need to register. We need to move toward automatic registering, and I'm coming down to Madison soon to help out with the right to boycott. I can't believe that there's all these laws that prohibit people from expressing their First Amendment rights that states are picking up, but it's part of the system that we're operating on, and so we're operating under a lot of duress at all levels. When it comes to federal treaty rights, we got 11 federally recognized tribes in Wisconsin. All of them have numerous treaties. The Ojibwe of northern Wisconsin, there's 6 Ojibwe tribal governments and reserved areas in northern Wisconsin. And there are something like 17 treaties that impact the Ojibwe Nation, started in Michigan, all the way over into northern Minnesota and North Dakota. And then, of course, about 60% of the Ojibwe Nation resides in Canada. And so Canada had its own relationships. But each entity has their own treaties that apply to them. The treaties are different. The Ojibwe treaties, for example, preserve reserved hunting and fishing rights, 50% of those rights in northern Wisconsin, those are retained rights. And I just always request people to try to understand the nature of contractual law and treaty rights, and understand that these are rights that are retained by tribes, retained for the political citizens of that entity. It's not a race-based entity. We have many tribes who have criteria that's not just blood quantum oriented, and a lot of tribes are moving in that direction, getting rid of the blood quantum process that applies to horses and dogs and other entities that have pedigrees. It was meant to bleed out the Indian community at some point mathematically. So we've been under a lot of attack, not so much in terms of trying to protect the treaty rights, because the treaties are there and they're always bound for interpretation, clarification, justification, whatever it is, negotiation. But under this administration, the attack is coming administratively. It comes to funding cuts at the Department of Interior, funding cuts at the Environmental Protection Agency, funding cuts at the Bureau of Indian Affairs, all entities that deal with Indian tribes and citizens, and those services are going to be lacking. The attack on the Department of Interior has taken infrastructure and administration money away from tribes. So we're allies with all the other people who've been impacted by this particular administration and their budget cutting strategy. So they retain property rights, and they're property rights that anyone else can earn. That's always a surprising thing. When I argue that when people would, I was in state government from 82 to 86. I was the tribal policy advisor to Governor Anthony S. Earl in Madison. And Wisconsin was ill prepared for the treaty decision that came down by the conservative federal court in Chicago after the liberal Judge Doyle had ruled that over the course of 100 years, somehow the treaty and contract had evaporated or changed. It was actually the 7th District Conservative Court that reversed that decision, and the U.S. Supreme Court upheld it, saying a treaty is a contract. It's fundamental property law in the United States. You don't take property away without just compensation or without negotiating that with the individual that has maintained those property rights. So we're going to be allies on all these fronts because of the way all of us are being assaulted. It's unbelievable how universal this is. I went to a meeting The other night in Washburn, Wisconsin, there was a massive overflowing crowd of 60-some people who heard me speak there, and I gave my regular wrap-up conversation there, and I says, look, there's enough people here that the next time you meet, you ought to invite your clergy over here. You ought to invite your public school administrators or some of the teachers, get the community involved. We need everyone. There's only so many spokesmen like the people presenting tonight that can keep a right track mind and advocate in a way that's very effective. But we need people to cook for us. We need people to make sure that they can clean up. We need people we need musicians writing music. We need people making poetry. We need photographers and headline writers. We need people to make phone calls. We need people to write letters to the editor. We need everyone out there. So what we really have to do is not just build leaders, but find organizations and coalitions that come together and we have impact. And not everyone's up to joining all the things that I belong to, but I belong to board of directors for Friends of Madeline Island Historic Preservation, the museum, LaPointe Center for the Arts, Great Lakes Lifeways Institute. There's about 30 here. I'm not going to read them off, but I'm really actively involved in the community on a regular basis in small and big ways. And recruitment nowadays seems to be at its prime. So as Anita said earlier, have you talked to your neighbor? Have you talked to other people in your church? Have you talked to people at the school board meetings? Have you talked to people in the restaurant? Can you pick up conversations and have conversations that love and care and those kinds of things? We need all our allies. And so I'll leave it at that and take questions later. Miigwech.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I just found out, well, I didn't find out, but my son has been trying to find out what tribe his father is from in New York, and we just found out that their native tribe is Arapaho up in New York. So we need to know how this colonialism have taken the land and done all that they've done to the native people here, the native to this land, and you giving us so much information, and we want to partner in any way that we can, and I'm thank you for giving us such good information.
I guess I would add one tiny little thing, and that is I've read on many, many reports that it takes about 3 to 4% of society getting involved in political and social and legal events, and that's considered enough to impact policy. And I think we're getting over that threshold real quick.
Yes, yes. And we have to come together. We're powerful together. We're more powerful together. And so we need to remember that we're all human and we want to protect human rights. We all human. They're taking, it looks like everything that we worked so hard for is they're trying to abolish. So we are not looking to go backwards. And thank you for that information, Mr. Domain. I appreciate that. And thank you for referencing all the other speakers, and you and the other ones that have referenced other speakers that you glean information from as well. Okay, well, we do have our last and final speaker, Mr. No, not the final. No, okay. Well, we do have David Ortiz Whittingham that is coming. He's going to be speaking on Worker Justice, Wisconsin. I thought he was the last speaker for tonight, but if he's not, then Dina will update us on who the final speaker is. So we're looking forward to hearing from Mr. Ortiz Whittingham.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Especially if I'm not the last speaker, I'll make sure to keep things brief. I know I see it's around 7:50. But yeah, my name's David Ortiz Whittingham. I work at Worker Justice Wisconsin, where I'm the construction organizer. For those of you who may not know, Worker Justice Wisconsin is a worker center located in Madison. A worker center is essentially a community organization, typically in the form of a nonprofit organization that exists to educate workers on their rights and support them in their efforts to defend their rights when their rights are being violated. We have a number of programs at the Workers Center. One is sort of general organizing. So workers who have issues on the job, we teach them about how they can start to organize with their coworkers in order to address those issues. Because the sort of the perspective we come from is that these issues are typically collective, and even and regardless, the best way to address issues in the workplace is in the collective manner. If one worker stands up and speaks up, they can be fired. They can't fire the whole workplace. And so that's the approach that we take, especially given that the protections that workers do have in the United States under the National Labor Relations Act when they take action together. Concerted activity is what it's called, legally speaking. When they take action together, they have stronger legal protections than if they are trying to make changes on the job on their own. So we educate workers on organizing generally. We also have a cooperatives program. So worker cooperatives, we support workers in organizing worker cooperatives, which are essentially businesses but run collectively. So all the workers are also owners of the business rather than having a CEO. There's one person who owns the business and tells the workers what to do. The workers have ownership collectively, each to sort of have their own stock essentially in the business that they run together, and they make decisions democratically as opposed to a top-down manner. So that's one program we have. We also have a membership program for workers who have come to the center. We have monthly membership meetings. This is open to any worker, whether they've had gotten support from us or whether they're just a community member who wants to be an ally. A membership program that basically is increasingly directing the organization. At each of our membership meetings, the members of the organizations make decisions about the direction of the organization and about sort of what direction it's going to take, what decisions are going to be made, what programs are going to be done. And so that's the direction that we're taking the membership program in, which is very exciting. And then finally, we have the construction program, which is my program as the construction organizer. And that program is born out of the fact that the construction industry is rife with abuses. I mean, again, I'm trying to keep it brief, but I could talk for a very long time. Especially, we work with all workers, but all the organizers are bilingual. And we work with a lot of immigrant workers, a lot of Spanish-speaking workers. And the reality is that it's often the immigrant workers in the construction industry and, generally most industries, to be fair, but certainly in the construction industry, immigrant workers that are routinely the most abused, often taken advantage of for their unfamiliarity that they might have with the systems and the economy of the United States, having come from a different country. So we see wage theft, we see safety violations. A lot of workers are working in very precarious conditions, not working for reputable contractors or subcontractors. We also see a phenomenon called misclassification, which is essentially where a worker should be considered an employee of a company or of a subcontractor, but instead they are classified as an independent contractor. You may have heard this in discussions about Uber and Lyft, about whether Lyft drivers are independent contractors, employees, because how they're classified has significant impacts. When you're an employee, you have a lot more rights. When you're an employee, your employer has to take out a workers' comp insurance. They have to, they have a responsibility to provide all these things for you as a worker, as an employee. If you're an independent contractor, all that responsibility is on your hands or on your shoulders. So you have workers who basically are essentially kind of tricked into opening up their own business or acting as a contractor, thinking that they have their own business when they really don't, and they don't understand all the requirements that come along with it. And all of the insurance is on their shoulders. So if everything goes fine. But if someone gets injured on the job, they might be in a really tough spot because they didn't take out their insurance, and all that was on their shoulders as opposed to the company that subcontracted them. So those are a few of the big problems that I see, when I'm going to construction sites and trying to talk with the workers. Again, misclassification, wage theft, and safety issues. And so what we're working on is making sure that workers are aware of their rights, and educating workers on how they can organize, how they can come together, form workplace committees, and organize on their workplaces in order to collectively take on these issues. Because individually we won't be able to, but collectively, if all the workers in a workplace stand together, they can make significant changes. Let me see. Let me look at the rest of my notes. No, it's 7:55, so I'll wrap things up in a bit to leave it to the next speaker. But so that's a bit about what we do, and those are some of the issues that we're addressing at Worker Justice Wisconsin. We're basically part of the labor movement and trying to bring new energy to it, and help making sure that workers understand their right to organize and are able to take advantage of it, whether they are going to join a union formally or some other method of collectively organizing. That's what we're here to do, to make sure that they know their options and are supported in their efforts to organize in order to protect their rights and to make their workplaces better. For anyone who's listening, if they're interested in this sort of work or in supporting it, broadly speaking, you know, we'd always recommend that people keep an eye on any labor actions going on in their area. For example, if you have a union, if there's a union going on strike in your area, go out and join them on the picket line. Specific to Worker Justice Wisconsin, this is of course specific to folks who are in Dane County. We have a rapid response network that anyone can join if they're interested. I'll send the Google form in the chat after I'm done talking. But it's basically a Google form that you can put your contact information, and then when we have some sort of action, some sort of protest or a picket or a march involving workers who are victims of wage theft or are suffering from some other sort of issue and are looking for community support, then we let everyone on that list know so that people can come and, you know, show that community support, because that's a huge thing when we're doing these public actions, showing that the community cares. It's not just the workers on their own, but that the community cares about what's going on, significant as well. So before I forget here, I'll put that right in the Zoom link, or right in the Zoom chat there. Anyone, especially if you're in Dane County, because we primarily operate out of Dane County, we're a fairly small organization, but we often operate out of other places too, every once in a while, but primarily out of Dane County. But so if you're in Dane County, that's where most of our actions will be. So any interest in being a part of that and involved in coming to support, we love, you know, all the folks that we can get. So yeah, that's it for me, and I know we'll have Q&A later, but yeah, thanks again for having us.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Good information. And if it doesn't apply to you, you can definitely apply it to others. And not only that, you know, you can pass the information on to others that will need it, and you know they need it. I know I have nieces and nephews that I'm always rallying for. And I do apologize. I greatly apologize. We do have Abigail Sweats, and I hope I pronounced her name right.
Yep.
She's with Fair Wisconsin, which Fair Wisconsin works to build a fair, safe, and inclusive Wisconsin for all lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people by advancing, achieving, and protecting their civil rights. We welcome her. We are glad that she's here, and we're all stronger together. Thank you, Abigail.
Thank you so much. Excuse me. So I'm Abigail Sweats. My pronouns are she, her. I am the executive director of Fair Wisconsin, which is our state's only statewide LGBTQ+ civil rights and political advocacy organization. I am also a new parent, so you might hear an infant crying in the background at some point. And I have been taught as a new parent to never make a promise I cannot keep. And so tonight I will not be making any kind of promises, because I'll be honest, I can't promise it will all be okay in this current environment. There's not much I know to be absolutely true right now. Not much I feel certain about, except this space with all of you and us, our LGBTQ+ and allied communities for justice. So holding close the power of our LGBTQ+ allied communities, what is next in all of this uncertainty is a question that a lot of people ask me when as a civil rights organization. And so I have a few answers that I would like to share with you that have been at least helpful amongst some of the other leaders in the movement that I'm a part of. First of all, let me say that fear is understandable. There is a lot that is uncertain, and I am scared too. I also think we have to remember that the LGBTQ plus community has always faced hostility. It has often been from the government, and yet we are still here. This is a moment to organize and to mobilize, and most importantly, to take care of ourselves and of our community. And that is going to have to look different for everyone, because we all come to this moment from a different place of safety or level of privilege or comfort with the unknown and all of this uncertainty. And however we are able to show up for ourselves and our community, that is what we need to do. And it is literally my job to be in the fight for LGBTQ plus equality. And of course, I invite you to join Fair Wisconsin, and I will put links to all the things so that you can join us. But I also know it is not in everyone's capacity to be in the fight, and I get that. I truly believe that living our lives as queer and allied people is a beautiful, necessary thing. And that means that taking care of ourselves and our community and making sure we continue to live is in and of itself powerful and will create change. And so when I look at LGBTQ plus rights in Wisconsin and organizing our community and my organization, I think a lot about the work ahead of us during this very, very soon nonpartisan spring election, during Wisconsin's legislative session, and all the work we do to educate the public. And so I invite you to join us for any or all of it, again, knowing that the needs of everyone in terms of how they can show up are different. We are in another state legislative session in Wisconsin, and bills targeting specifically our trans youth have already received hearings and votes this month. Those hearings, there were 3 of them. On 4 bills. They lasted anywhere from 6 to over 10 hours, depending on the bill. And that is thanks to our LGBTQ plus and allied communities showing up, testifying and registering in opposition to these anti-trans bills, and submitting written testimony to Fair Wisconsin that then we were able to submit to the legislature on our constituents and community members' behalf. And to be clear, I am talking about tens of thousands of pages of testimony. I think we topped 30,000 pages this year. I would have to go back and actually look at all the reams of paper we bought, but it was a lot. And I'm so incredibly proud of my very small but mighty team. To be clear, none of these 4 anti-trans bills will become law, as they face a certain veto from Governor Evers, just like last time and the time before. That said, having them receive hearings and votes at all is still a harmful thing for our community. And so being able to show up as a community to show our trans youth that there are so many of us who support and care for them was really, really important. In the future, if and when more bills are introduced and receive a hearing, Fair Wisconsin will send out more action alerts through our email newsletters and social media. So I'm going to put in the chat right now, if I can find it, the link to make sure that you're able to subscribe to our newsletter to get those action alerts, or follow us on social media. It's the easiest way to find out what's going on and how to get involved. I'll also say we have more pro-equality legislators in our state assembly and state senate than we have had in decades or probably ever. So we'll be also working with them to advance more proactive work. Our focus is on strengthening our non-discrimination statute by adding gender identity and gender expression, along with our pupil non-discrimination statute with the same additions. I am not saying that's going to happen this year or next, but I want to make it really clear that we are working very hard to lay the groundwork to make it possible that as soon as we have a pro-equality majority in the legislature, that we will be able to get those bills across the finish line. And we will continue that work until our trans and non-binary families are robustly protected under Wisconsin law. If you're interested in helping us do proactive work, Fair Wisconsin is hosting an LGBTQ plus Equality Day at the Capitol on May 7th. It is free. We teach you how to best discuss our issues with legislators. We set up the appointments for you, and we feed you. So please, if you're interested, the website I just shared in the chat, if you go to the events section of that website, you can sign up. We would love to see you there. My work as an advocate for our LGBTQ plus community started actually when I was a middle school teacher and Gender and Sexuality Alliance advisor. I loved teaching 8th grade because the kids are old enough to have strong opinions and really want to share them with you, but also young enough to be open to new ideas. And they really loved new ideas. And I think back and I really marveled at their willingness to dream big. And I think we could all learn a lot from them right now. The current onslaught of anti-trans executive orders and state legislation, the overwhelm they make us feel and the chaos that they create is 1000% on purpose by forces that are trying to do this to us. They are calculated to make us feel small, and they are calculated to make us feel powerless, and we cannot let them work. And so I wanted to offer this fueling thought as we end. We, as LGBTQ plus and allied communities for justice, we cannot let anyone steal our ability to believe in a better world. My students, with their hope in the future, absolutely believed in their ability to change the world, and we can too. So as we spend time in community tonight, I want you to keep this belief held close, that we are facing difficult times and we still have the power to make our state and our country and our world a better place. So thank you for having me, and I'm happy to answer questions until I hear more crying, in which case I really need to go help my wife.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure if Tynetta is going to be able to come back on. She's having a little emergency, but I want to say thank you very much to all the speakers. It's been a really great evening, and we'll be very happy to share all of your information. And David, I know you felt rushed. I think it would be wonderful. We have a newsletter coming up. Maybe you could write something, and all of you could write something for the newsletter that'll be coming out if you like. You could email me, or if that's an interest for you, because I think the thing that the network can do is to keep broadcasting out and welcoming people to this coalition of all of us. And I think this week, because we have not only member organizations, which most of you are, but also allies and partners, it's so important. And I totally love hearing everything that's been said towards that end. So I think at this point we should shut the recording off, if you would, and we'll just open it up for questions and answers.